Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tanya, for those of you that are new here, and I am a watercolor and acrylic artist. So I am painting a bunch of collages lately. I'm just going to show you. They're watercolors, and what I do is I just paint little florals or hearts or leaves or houses, and then I cut them apart, and I leave a nice little white border on the edge of them, and then I incorporate them into a painting that I have already done. So this one here, I did the whole background, and I'm not sure if I showed a video on this. I think I did, but I'm not 100% sure. I just painted the background, the moon and the stars, the sky, the hills, some of the trees. So that's all on my watercolor page. But then I went ahead and just placed in some flowers, more towards the beginning here, at the bottom of the painting, and then I placed a house. So you can incorporate little things into your painting, and it just gives it a little bit more of a 3-dimension. And that's what I've been really into lately. Yesterday I did a little video on watercolor Valentine cards, and here too is a collage. It's a little bit more of a simple collage. So what I did was I painted the 2 hearts, and then on a separate piece of paper, cut them out, and then I painted my watercolor card, and then I put them on to the watercolor card. So that's just like a really simple little collage that you can do. So you can go from something a little bit more complicated to something a little bit more simple. So just take it to whatever level you feel comfortable with. So I'm just going to show you, this is my process of how I start. I take my watercolor paper, and I just started using Bohong watercolor paper. There's 20 sheets in here, and then this is a size 8x5, I believe. And it's 100% cotton. It's actually pretty good watercolor paper because I'm very used to using my arches. But this one here seemed pretty good. I liked it probably just as much as I do the arches. So I go ahead and I just start painting out little flowers. And I'm going to show you how I do some of these flowers in a minute, but I just wanted to show you my process here. So I'll do like a whole sheet of the same flower or something very similar. Here I did some red ones and purple ones, and then I did some smaller little red ones. Here I did some, they're more like carnation looking flowers. I used a little bit more of a vibrant pink and a perm rose. I think the vibrant pink was the Daniel Smith Opera Pink, and then the permanent rose was the Winsor Newton. And then I did some leaves in the background. And this is more like little marigolds here. I just painted in some little marigolds, and then again, some of these little pinkish red flowers. So I try to use up as much of my page as I can, and then I start to cut them out. And when I cut them out, they end up looking like something like this. So I've got all sorts of different flowers and houses in this little box that I keep here. And I have more of my leaves on one side, and then I have different flowers on the other side. And then I even have some that are a little bit more geometric shapes. And I really love making those as well because they're just nice little fillers into a painting. If you just need a little something in there, but it's not really a particular flower. Oh, and here's my house. So here's some little houses I've done as well. There should be a whole bunch of little houses in here. Let me see where they are. Oh, here they are. I just did a whole little series on little houses so that they're ready to go when I have got a painting on a big painting, like on a big size sheet of paper that I had done the background already, and then I just want to fill it in with some little collage watercolors. So I have them all ready to go in this box. All right, so, oh, and then I even decorated the box with some of my flowers as well. It's just a nice wooden box. I picked it, I don't even remember where I picked it up, probably a thrift store. And then I just glued on some of my florals that I had done in watercolors. So even my box is decorated. So, all right, I'm gonna go and show you a few of the flowers that I did yesterday. I'm gonna start out with the really simple one. And it's just a 3 little clover type flower. And I used my Winsor Newton watercolor paints, and I believe the one that I used was mauve. So I'm gonna go ahead and use the mauve. Which one is mauve? This one is the mauve. I'm gonna go ahead and use mauve again. And I'm gonna be using it on my Bohong watercolor paper. And then I've got my Grumbacher brushes. I've got a size 5, a 4, and a 2. And then I've got my Winsor Newton watercolors on my palette like this. All right, so I'm gonna take my mauve and I'm gonna add a little bit of water. I'm using my size 5. I'm gonna add a little bit of water in there. And then I'm gonna make 3 little dots. So again, let me show you the one we're doing. Very, very simple. We're gonna be doing these flowers. All right, so what I do is I just take my brush and I put 3 little dots in the shape of like a little triangle, okay? Wash off your brush pretty well, and then just take some water and bleed it out from one of the dots. Wash off your brush and bleed it out a little bit more. Just add a little bit more water to it. And you can make these petals as wide as you want. Then go around your page and do the same thing with the next one. And if you feel like your petal is just a little too vibrant, just take a little water on your brush and just soak up some of that paint. See how automatically that just takes off some of that paint? Your petal will be really, really light if you do that. Turn this a little bit. All right. And now you can have these petals as close together as you want, or you can have them further apart. It's up to you. It's your painting. All right. I'm going to take off some of that paint. I want it to be a little bit darker in the middle. So I'm going to take my paint and I'm just going to add another little drop right there. That's exactly what I do. Very, very simple. If you feel that it's bleeding too much into the petal, then here again, just take your brush and soak up some of that paint and wipe it off on a paper towel. All right, so there's the first one. I'm gonna do that again for you. So 1 little dot, 2 little dot, 3 little dot. Okay, and you wanna work kind of quickly because you don't want these dots to dry up. You can always go in and add a little bit more. Now see how that one, there was a lot of water on there, so it just kind of soaked it right up. You can always add a little bit more water on there. I mean, a little bit more paint on there. And then let it dry completely, and if you want to make the middle a little bit more dark, just let it dry completely, and then you can add more. You can even add a different color in the middle too, which is kind of nice. All right, so that's the first one that I did here. Let's see, let's do the marigold. This one's really fun. So I'm taking again my size 5, and I'm gonna be taking my cad orange right here, just get some water on it. And actually I'm gonna be using a little bit of my cad red pal as well, which is a little bit of a darker orange. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that one wet as well. All right, I'm gonna take a little bit of my cad orange. And the way I did this one was I started out with 1 petal like this. And before it dries, go ahead and add some water. You could have wet the area. Actually, I'll do another petal in a different technique. Okay, so that one there, I added the line and then I added water. This one here, I'm actually gonna do with just water first. So there's a couple different ways you can achieve this, and they look almost exactly the same. Let's go ahead and add a little bit. Okay. And then if it doesn't soak up as nicely as you want, you can add a little bit of water and just push that paint around a little bit. Okay. There. Now I don't know if you hear that noise in the background, but my cat is right next to me and she is snoring really loud, so I apologize for that. Okay, so let's do the first technique. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add a little bit of paint just around my edge. Then some water, bleed it out a little bit. All right, and you can make these petals as big as you want. If you feel like that's not big enough, just make them a little bit bigger. All right, and then I'm gonna do the second technique again for you, where I'm just wetting the petal first. So here's that. And then just let it bleed in. And if you want it to look a little bit more realistic, and you don't want to put the border all the way around your petal, because then it'll look like an outline, just have it maybe just on one side or just up here towards the tip of the end of the petal. just put a little bit more paint there. So see how I've got darker down here around this edge, and then here's a little bit lighter. It just looks a little bit more realistic, kind of like the light is just shining on the petal in a certain direction. Put a little middle there if you want. If you want to let it bleed out a little bit again, you can. Sometimes I just add these really little lines to it so it looks like there's some little veining in my flower. Just gives it a little bit more of a realistic look, a little bit more texture. All right, we're gonna go ahead and make another one because I have to let this dry before we go into the other petals. All right, so I'm gonna get my orange again, and I'm gonna make another petal here. So they're almost like these little teardrop. Soak up some of that. Now if I see, I made a little bit of an outline there and I didn't want to do that. So you could just soak up some of that paint. There. All right, and then make another little petal. So I'm kind of going back and forth between the two techniques just to show you. So this one here is adding the water first and then adding the paint, just letting it absorb. And then the other technique was adding the paint first and then adding the water and just letting it float around your page. All right, so there's one, there's two. I didn't want to make this one so big because when I cut these out, I want to leave room here. So I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller. Okay, pretty good. It's dry. So another thing is, you'll see me when I test to see if something's still wet, I don't use my fingertips. There's oils on the end of your fingertips. Even if you don't feel it and you don't see it, there is definitely oils here. And you don't want to touch your page try not to touch your page as much as possible. So even when I go to feel something, I use this part because of my fingers, because this has less oils on it. And this one here I feel is still a little wet. So we're just gonna do this guy. All right. I am going to take my orange again. It's still the same cad orange. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a couple little, it looks almost like another little petal is laying right on top of it. And I'm just going to just take some water. Oh, and I've moved to my size 2 for this now. Now that we're getting into smaller petals, I've moved to my size 2. All right, so now it looks like one petal's on top of the other. I'm going to do that again. Over here. So I'm just kind of doing another little petal, and you can just leave a little bit of room. You can leave as much room as you want. It doesn't really matter. You just want to see that first petal poking out. All right, and this is what I'm talking about. So see how I've got my 1 layer, my 2 layer, my 3 layer. So I've got like 3 petals going on here. 1, 2, 3. This one here, I've got 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it just depends on how many layers. So this one here looks a little bit more ruffled than this one. 2 different looks. All right, again, like that. And this is almost that translucent technique that I was showing you. I think it was last month. I have a video on my translucent flowers, and those are really, really pretty. This is actually kind of another way to do it. So I'm just adding a little border there, and then I'm just pulling it in, okay? Now you're gonna wanna start closing up some of these negative spaces that you have between the petals. You're gonna wanna start closing those up a little bit, just because, well, some marigolds you see all the little petals, but most of the marigolds that I grow in my garden are clusters. They don't have that many, it doesn't have that much negative space between the petals. All right, so there's that one. Now we're gonna let that dry a second, and we're gonna go back to this one. Now see how this one dried really nicely? Some of the petals are a little bit darker, so it just, when I put in that little center of the flower, it just absorbed more into these 2 petals than it did that one. And I actually like the variation. If you don't like the variation, what you could have done was just gone in and soaked up some of that paint before it dried. Or even with a paper towel. But I like that variation. It just gives it a little bit more of a realistic look, that it's not so perfect. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back in. Now that my flower has dried, I'm going to go back in with my center. It's just the same color. If you want to do a different color, you can. It would have been pretty with a purple, I'm sorry, a blue or even a red, because red and blue make purple. It would have been really pretty with a red center or a blue center. But I just chose the same mauve. And I love that flower. Just very delicate, very simple, very delicate. All right, let's see. Okay, we can go on to make this one now. So again, it's just my cad orange. Look how pretty that layered look is. And if you want to leave a little bit of your first petal showing through, it gives it a little bit of a dimension if you show the lights and the darks. So this one here, I didn't fill in all the way. See how I've got a little bit of that first petal showing through? You could do that as well. Otherwise, these I made a little bit more solid. But it's nice even just to have a variation of both. All right, so I've still got my size 2. And I'm gonna make another little layer here, and I'm still using my cad orange. I haven't changed. We are gonna add a little bit of the cad red pale in a minute, but not yet. Actually, I'm gonna move over to my size 4. My 2 wasn't getting enough water. So you'll see, if you're not getting enough coverage, just move to a size bigger for your brush. All right, and actually that's too much of a border for me. Let me just go in there and scrub it out. Now, if it's a little bit too much, just all you do is you take your brush and you just kind of play around with the edge there. Scrub out that edge just a little bit. Pull it towards the center. All right, again on this side. So you see how you're getting this layered look? The first layer is a little bit more translucent because it was just one layer of paint on the paper. Then you get a little bit darker with the second layer because the second petal is a second layer on top of the first. And then the third is even darker. So the more layers you make, the darker your painting will become. And it just gives it automatically this look of being raised, this look of 3-dimension. And it's automatically doing it for you as you just keep layering and layering. I'm going to start closing up some of these areas. And I didn't do that at the beginning because I wasn't sure where I wanted to close up these areas. But I'm going to take a little bit of my paint and I'm just going to pull it down. So again, this is going to be nice and light because this is paint directly on the white paper. All right, just like that. And you don't need to bring it all the way down. Just fill it in very lightly. Wash off your brush and pull it down. And you don't really need to see exactly where that petal is. I mean, if you really wanted to do the translucent look, you would make the petal go all the way down and you would see it through layer. But you know what? This is just a little bit of an easier way of doing it. And marigolds aren't exactly that translucent of flowers anyways. Their petals are pretty opaque. And pull it down. So see how that's automatically starting to fill in between the petals here. So I'm getting rid of some of that negative space. Okay, so that was the cad orange. Now we're going to be adding the cad red pale, which is a little bit more of a tomato-y orange. So this is the one we just used. This is the one we're using now. Okay, and I'm just going to make a little wash of it right here on my palette. And I'm using my size 2 again. And I'm going to come in and I'm just going to very gently put a little bit of a border on some of these petals that already have the darker edge. I'm just going to accentuate it a little bit, not the whole thing. You don't want it to be an outline, but maybe a little bit here, skip an area, maybe a little bit here. Okay. And this is just with the little wash I made. So here, skip, maybe a little bit more down here. All right, it just pushes these petals. It gives them a little bit more of a pop, okay? And I'm barely touching my page, barely. And it just pops it right off the page a little bit more. All right, I'm gonna move to my size 4. I think this is my size 4. And I'm gonna take that same color and I'm gonna do a petal right in the middle. And I'm gonna bring it in. Now these two colors are very, very similar, but this has got a little bit more red to it. Wash off your brush and drag it in. All right, again, wash off your brush and drag it in. Look how pretty. And then what I like to do is, it's probably gonna bleed because my petals are nice and wet. You can put a little dot in the center. And if your petals are still wet, it will automatically bleed. If you don't want it to bleed, then go ahead and just dry your petals first. And if you feel like you need a little bit more of that red color here and there, go ahead and just pop it in. Beautiful. So I just showed you those two flowers. The last one I'm going to show you for today is this one, and this is more of the translucent flower that I think I had done a video maybe a month ago on these translucent flowers, but I'm going to show you once again. There's so many different variations you could do. I'm going to take my size 5, and let's do this one in, let's go ahead and do this one in my ultramarine violet. So I'm going to get it nice and wet. Okay. Wash off your brush and just make a petal. Now my paint is a little bit tinged, which is good because I want you to be able to see the petal. And then go ahead and just drop in, and it's almost like these, but we're going to do more layers. Okay, so there's the first. And here again, if you want to fill it in and just do some veining, definitely. I'm going to do another petal. Hard to see it when it's just water, but it's there. Let it bleed. Here again, you can go up. If you want to leave some of the edges, like I was saying before, with no paint, it'll just automatically bleed into it a little bit. All right. I'm going to make another. Another petal. Let it bleed right up. You can make some of that veining. All right, and another. All right. Now you would normally just let this dry naturally so it can bleed and do its thing. But I am going to blow dry this so we can move on. All right, so I'm going to take my water once again, now that it's nice and dry, and I'm going to add ooh, I have orange on that brush. That's not what I want. I am going to fill it in again. So this one here, I'm making a petal that's laying a little bit on top of this one and a little bit on top of that one. The same technique, add a little bit of paint, let it do its thing. Okay, wash off your brush You can pull some of this paint up from the middle here if you want to add a little bit of veining to it. Now don't work it too much because then you're going to scrub some of the paint away from the first petal. You don't want to do that. All right. Go ahead, add a little bit of water, a little bit on that petal, a little bit on this petal, and then add your paint. Let it bleed. Let it do its thing. You can bring it up a little bit. Add a little veining if you want to. Okay. And let's turn it around. Put another little petal over here. Fill it in with the water. And a little paint. Let it do its thing. A little veining. All right. So see how it's automatically making this part of the flower where the two petals meet, it gets a little bit darker. That's what you want. That's the translucent look. And you can go ahead and clean up some of your edges later on, so don't worry about it too much. Add a little water, and then let it bleed and do its thing. Add some veining. All right, look how pretty that's looking. Very pretty. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and blow dry this. Normally I would just let it do its thing, but I'm gonna go ahead and blow dry it again. Okay, so I am going to take my number 2 still, and let's see, a little bit more water. And I'm just gonna go over some of these petals. If you feel like you wanna just make it a little bit more crisp, just go over the petals with another little layer and pull some of it back off. You're just crispening up. You're just gonna crispen up where those two petals meet. Okay, wipe off your brush, pull some of it back up. You don't want it too dark that it starts to look funny. Look how pretty that looks. It's really, really pretty. Now, I'm going to show you on my originals, I had even added in a little bit of red in here too. So you could just play around with this a little bit. If you want to just, even if it looks a little bit more whimsical and not realistic anymore, just have fun with it. So I added a little red in here. I gave it a little bit of a darker center. This one here, I think I'm going to just leave it as the ultramarine violet center. Just like that. And if you want to go ahead and accentuate those a little bit more, you want to add a little bit more veining, you could definitely do that. It's your painting. If you want it to be a little bit more whimsical looking or a little bit more subtle looking, I'm going to add a couple more little veins right in here just to give it a little bit more dimension. You don't have to do this part. It's just fun to keep adding to it, but you definitely don't have to do that. And if you feel like it's too much, then go ahead and just lift it back up. Blend it in a little bit. If you scrub it gently, it lifts it right back up. You'll never get the white of the paper back, but you will be able to lighten it up a little bit. There you go. So this video was just to show you a little bit of how I make my collage paintings. Again, I just go ahead and I just fill up a whole page with a whole bunch of different flowers and leaves and houses or whatever else I feel like layering in my painting. And then I go ahead and I trim them out and they end up looking something like this. So there you go. Well, I hope you have a good day. I hope you keep painting. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and make a comment in the comment section if you want more videos like this one. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks. Bye-bye.